I counted 47 aircraft on the line. The Air Force record said 42, and I was ordered to stop counting. The morning after that incident, I was called into Hangar 3, the one nobody ever uses unless something's gone wrong. Colonel Davis was waiting beside the jet that shouldn't exist. Its skin shimmered like heat haze, paint too fresh for something that had supposedly never flown. He didn't ask me to sit. "Sergeant Hale," he said, voice flat. "What did you log yesterday?" 47, sir." He tapped the clipboard I'd signed. "Then you miscounted." I wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes said not to. The air smelled like hot hydraulic fluid and ozone, new aircraft smell, sharp and artificial. When I stepped closer, my reflection warped across the fuselage as if the metal were breathing. That's when I noticed the tail number. It wasn't stenciled like the others, it moved, digits shifting faintly like numbers on a digital clock. Davis caught me looking. "You didn't see that," he said. "You'll stick to maintenance reports only from now on." That should have been the end of it. But later, out on the line, I saw 2 crewmen towing that same jet toward runway 19. No manifest, no fuel truck, no flight ops clearance. Just the distant whine of something too quiet for a turbine engine. I walked toward them, pretending to check wheel chocks. When I got within 20 feet, both crewmen looked up. Same face. Not twins. Identical. Every instinct told me to turn around. Instead, I glanced back toward the operations tower. All windows were dark, though it was noon. The jet's canopy sealed on its own, hydraulics humming with no pilot inside. The nose lifted slightly, like the aircraft was breathing before takeoff. Then, with no clearance, it accelerated down the runway and vanished halfway through the roll, not up, not down, just gone. For a moment, the desert was completely silent. Then every radio on my belt lit up at once, crackling with static and fragments of words. 42 confirmed. Repeat, 42. That night, I couldn't sleep. The digits on my alarm clock kept flickering. 2:47, 2:42, back and forth. I unplugged it, but the display stayed on. When I reported for duty the next morning, my logbook was missing, replaced with a clean copy showing the correct number of aircraft. That's when I remembered something Davis had said in orientation months earlier, a rule we laughed about because it sounded like superstition. Rule number 4. If your count ever changes between shifts, don't recount. Report to command and wait for instructions. Back then, it was just another line in the manual. Now, I realized it wasn't a warning. It was a test, one I'd already failed. That evening, command sent me to inventory the boneyard, hundreds of decommissioned aircraft under the desert sun, and parked dead center, covered in dust, but unmistakably real, was the same plane that vanished yesterday, still warm to the touch. When I arrived at Hangar 47B, the first thing I noticed was the silence. For an active airfield, it was too quiet. No mechanics shouting over jet engines, no fuel trucks rumbling. Just a row of locked hangar doors and the faint hum of lights flickering overhead. I flashed my clearance badge to the gate sergeant, a thick-jawed guy whose uniform looked wrong. The patch on his shoulder was inverted, subtle but off. When I asked about it, he didn't answer, just scanned my ID, held my gaze a moment too long, and said, "Stay on your assigned route, sir. Don't cross the yellow lines." Inside, the air felt heavy. There was a smell, ozone and something burnt. Rows of planes, F-18s mostly, but their markings were stripped. Some had serial numbers painted over in dull gray. I began counting. 1, 2, 3, 47 aircraft. But the manifest said 42 units. At first, I thought I misread the list. I checked again. 42 active units, no reserves, yet here stood 47, each perfectly aligned, gleaming under the hangar lights like they'd never flown. Then I saw one move. Not a full motion, just the landing gear twitching, hydraulics groaning softly. Nobody was inside. I stepped closer, jotting down the tail number. That's when the floor vibrated, a low hum rising from beneath the concrete, and the lights above began to pulse in sequence, like the planes were sinking to it. "Lieutenant," a voice crackled from the intercom above me, "you're not authorized in this section." The voice didn't match the name on the schedule. I froze. "I was assigned to routine inspection." "Negative. Please exit hangar 47B immediately." The hum beneath my feet intensified. The nearest jet's cockpit canopy began to slide open with a hiss, slow, mechanical, deliberate. I stepped closer, jotting down the tail number. That's when I heard it again, that faint, rhythmic sound, like whispering through static. It was coming from inside the aircraft's radio. I leaned in. "Don't count them." I stumbled back. The message repeated, slightly distorted this time. "Don't count them. Don't count them." Something clicked behind me. The hangar door was closing on its own. My radio went dead. I ran to the door's manual override, slammed the lever down, but it didn't move. The air pressure shifted suddenly, like the hangar had sealed itself airtight. Then, movement. All 47 jets flickered their navigation lights at once, a perfect synchronized pulse. Red, then blue, then white. My ears rang. My watch vibrated on my wrist, though I hadn't set any alarm. I looked down, and my wristwatch hands spun backward, violently, like the gears were rewinding time. And then, as fast as it began, everything stopped. Silence. When the lights stabilized, there were only 42 planes. The others were gone. No scorch marks, no footprints, just a faint metallic residue on the floor, like vapor had settled and vanished. I backed out slowly, heart hammering, until I hit the sunlight outside. The sergeant from earlier was standing there again, motionless, staring at me. He spoke quietly. "Did you count them?" I swallowed hard. "No, sir." He nodded once. "Good." Then he turned his head toward the control tower, muttering into his radio. "Another one saw it. Log it under code Echo." Before I could ask what that meant, he walked away. That night, I went back to my quarters and pulled the maintenance log again. Hangar 47B didn't exist on the new file. The page had been deleted. The numbering shifted so smoothly that no one would have noticed unless they'd seen the old copy. But I still had my handwritten notes: 47 aircraft, 5 unaccounted for, and a phrase echoing in my mind like a warning from somewhere deep inside the system. Don't count them. But the next morning, the missing planes came back, and this time, the flight record said they'd flown 6 hours before I even saw them disappear. The next morning, I walked back onto the flight line and froze. All 47 planes were there again, lined up perfectly, dew still on their wings, engines cold. It was as if nothing had happened. But when I checked the maintenance log, a new entry had appeared overnight. Routine flight, 0600 hours. Except I'd been in that hangar at 0600 hours, watching those same planes vanish. I opened the telemetry report. My hands started to shake. The black box data showed flight paths, coordinated ones, moving at 30,000 feet for exactly 6 hours. No pilot signatures, no flight clearance, and no corresponding radar contacts. Just ghost data. I grabbed my radio. "Control, this is Lieutenant Pierce. Can you confirm any unauthorized sorties overnight?" Static. Then a voice, not controls, came through. They came back cleaner this time. The line cut. I sprinted to the comms building, but inside, the duty officer looked confused when I explained. "There were no flights scheduled, Lieutenant. The tower was locked down all night. You must have a corrupted data feed." I wanted to argue, but the look on his face wasn't disbelief. It was fear, like he knew something and wished I hadn't brought it up. Back at the hangar, I noticed new markings on one of the jets. Faint symbols etched under the wing, almost like frost patterns. They weren't military, more like geometric equations. I brushed my fingers over them, and for a split second, the metal felt warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then a noise behind me. A man in a gray jumpsuit was standing by the far end of the hangar, clipboard in hand. No name tag, no insignia. He smiled when he saw me notice him. "You shouldn't be here, Lieutenant. 47B has been reclassified." "Since when?" "Since last night." He turned, walking toward one of the jets, and pressed his hand against the fuselage. The symbol beneath his palm glowed faintly, white, then orange. The hangar lights flickered. The floor vibrated again. That low hum returned stronger now, resonating in my ribs. The jet's lights blinked in perfect rhythm with the hum. "What's happening?" I shouted. The man didn't answer. He just stared at me with a look that wasn't quite human, too still, too calm, and said, "They're sinking again, but not to us." The hum peaked, sharp enough to rattle the metal beams above. Then silence, followed by a deafening roar as all 47 cockpits snapped open at once. Inside each was a figure, sitting perfectly upright, but none of them were moving. I stepped closer, heart pounding. Their uniforms looked right, but their faces, they weren't faces at all. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over where eyes and mouths should be. The man in gray said softly, "They always come back wrong." Before I could react, alarms blared. Red lights spun across the hangar. A mechanical voice announced, "Containment breach, Section Echo 7." The man backed away from the glowing jet. "You didn't see this, Lieutenant. If they ask, you were never here." Security burst in, weapons drawn, but when they aimed at the jets, there was nothing to aim at. Every aircraft was gone again. The space where they stood shimmered like heat waves before collapsing into nothing. The soldiers surrounded me. "Lieutenant Pierce, step away from the area." I tried to explain, but my words sounded insane even to me, so I said nothing. They escorted me out, filed a report, and that was it. The next morning, my clearance was downgraded, my access revoked, and every mention of Hangar 47B was erased from the base database. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window of my quarters watching the tarmac under the moonlight. Around 2 a.m., the floodlights along the runway flickered once, twice, and then I saw them. 47 faint silhouettes lined up perfectly in the dark, each glowing faintly at the edges like they were made of vapor and memory. And then, one by one, they lifted off, soundless, rising into the black sky. The next morning, I was called into debriefing. They told me I'd been found unconscious on the tarmac at 2:07 a.m., and that the footage showed me walking among 47 invisible aircraft. When I opened my eyes, I was in the infirmary. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and my throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming. A nurse was checking my pulse, her face stiff with the kind of politeness that hides fear. "Welcome back, Lieutenant," she said. "You've been asleep for 12 hours. I tried to sit up, but she pushed me gently down. "Don't strain yourself. The commander will want to speak with you." There was a mirror on the wall opposite the bed. I looked into it and froze. My reflection blinked half a second after I did. Before I could process it, 2 men entered, one in uniform, the other in a black suit. The suited one carried a small recorder. "Lieutenant Pierce," he said, sitting beside the bed. "You were found on the tarmac at 0207 hours. Can you explain what you were doing there?" "I was watching the planes. They were taking off." He didn't write that down. "The footage shows no aircraft on the field, Lieutenant. Only you. You were pacing the runway, talking to no one." That hit me like a punch. "No, there were 47 of them. You can check the telemetry data." He cut me off. "We already did. The logs were wiped. All of them." The uniformed officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, maybe he..." But the man in black raised a hand. "You saw something, Pierce. We're just trying to determine what." That's when I noticed the faint sound under his words. A low tone, rhythmic and steady, coming from the recorder in his hand. The same hum I'd heard in the hangar. "Turn that off," I said. He smiled. "You recognize it then?" My pulse spiked. The nurse stepped back. The lights flickered again. For a second, I swore I could see outlines, shapes, standing just behind the 2 men, translucent, watching. The man in black leaned closer. "They're still here, you know. They don't vanish. They just change phase." He clicked off the recorder and the sound stopped. The shapes faded. "Who are you?" I asked. He stood up. "Someone who's been trying to contain them for a long time." Then he turned to the officer. "Initiate phase 3. He's synced." The nurse pressed something cold against my neck. Everything went dark. When I woke again, I wasn't in the infirmary. I was in a room with concrete walls, no windows, just a single observation mirror. My wrists were cuffed to the table. Through a speaker, a calm voice said, "Lieutenant Pierce, do you know where you are?" I said nothing. The voice continued, "You're in building 47B. You've been relocated for observation. Please remain calm." My heart dropped. That building didn't exist. The intercom buzzed again. "We analyzed your brain activity while you were unconscious. The frequency pattern matches the hangar resonance. You were exposed longer than anyone else." "Exposed to what?" Static. Then a faint whisper layered beneath it, repeating something over and over. "We came back cleaner this time." I slammed my hands on the table. "What do you want from me?" The intercom cut out. A low vibration filled the room. The same hum again, deeper now. The mirror rippled as if it were made of water. I could see movement behind it, figures watching. Then one of them pressed its hand against the glass from the other side. The outline matched mine exactly, and when it smiled, I felt my own lips move. I stumbled back, panicking, trying to pull free from the cuffs. The glass shimmered brighter. The reflection leaned closer, pressing its forehead to the glass, my forehead. For a split second, my vision fractured, two perspectives overlapping. I could see myself from both sides of the mirror. Then, just like that, the hum stopped. The glass cleared. I was alone. A voice whispered through the intercom again, this time quiet, almost kind. "You're not the first, Pierce, but you might be the last to notice." The next morning, every monitor in the command center flickered on by itself, showing my face still locked inside that concrete room, repeating one sentence over and over. The next morning, I wasn't in the room anymore. At least, I didn't think I was. The walls were the same concrete gray, but the hum was gone, replaced by a faint electronic beeping, steady, mechanical, almost like a heartbeat. My wrists were free. The mirror was gone too. In its place was a screen built directly into the wall, black and silent. Then it flickered on. It showed the command center, rows of monitors, officers moving frantically. Every screen in the room was showing me, sitting exactly as I was now. Same lighting, same posture, same expression. Except I wasn't doing anything. The version of me on the screen slowly turned its head and looked up, like it knew I was watching. Then it smiled. The door behind me hissed open, and the man in black stepped in. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, eyes red from no sleep. "You've been broadcasting for 9 hours, Lieutenant. No one knows how it started." "What do you mean, broadcasting?" He gestured toward the wall screen. "Every secure line, every classified network. We can't shut it off. Your face is on every monitor in the facility." "That's not me," I said. He didn't argue. "It says things. It repeats coordinates, flashes patterns we can't decode. Then, sometimes, it laughs." He turned the screen off, but even with it blank, I could feel static building in the room, the air thick with it. "What happens if you destroy the signal?" I asked. We tried. The power grid fried. Then Building 47 came back online. I froze. came back, I thought it was sealed." He nodded. "It was, until your broadcast started." The silence that followed was heavy, until the walls began to hum again. This time, it wasn't mechanical. It sounded alive. We sprinted down the hallway, alarms wailing. Red lights flashed as the sound followed us through the metal corridors, deeper and deeper into the base. We reached the blast doors of Building 47. The keypad was already glowing green. Someone or something had unlocked it. The man in black drew his sidearm, but I could see his hands trembling. "Stay behind me." The doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, the hangar was completely different. No planes, no equipment, just darkness. And at the center, floating several feet off the ground, was a sphere of shifting light. It looked like a storm trapped in glass. Blue lightning coiled inside it, and for a split second, I saw faces in the glow. Faces of pilots I'd known. Faces I'd seen disappear. The man in black whispered, "It's sinking again." The sphere pulsed, and suddenly every monitor on the walls lit up with that same feed of me sitting in the chair, smiling. But now the image spoke. Altitude exceeded. Rule 1 breached. Return vector inverted. Then static. The sphere flared. The lights in the hangar exploded, showering sparks across the floor. I hit the ground as the man in black screamed, clutching his head. Through the blinding light, I saw the sphere split open, revealing what was inside. It was an SR-71 cockpit canopy, and inside it sat a pilot. Me. He opened his eyes, and when he did, I heard my own voice coming from everywhere at once. Mission complete. Subject reintegrated. Then everything went white. When I woke, I was sitting in the cockpit of the Blackbird, engines silent. My oxygen mask was gone, the world outside tinted in gold dawn light. I looked at the clock. It was 0600 hours, the day before the mission began. I checked the logs. Every flight before this one was still there, but the last entry was signed with my name, and underneath it, one line of text. Rule 10. If you return before you leave, don't tell them what you saw. 3 days later, NASA's Deep Space Array picked up a faint transmission repeating those same coordinates. They came from inside our own orbit. At an altitude no satellite should exist.
3 days after my return, the world quietly shifted. It didn't happen with explosions or headlines, just subtle ripples, like reality itself was exhaling. NASA's Deep Space Array in Goldstone picked up the first anomaly, a repeating transmission, faint but structured. The frequency matched the same tone from Building 47, the hum. Only this time, it wasn't coming from deep space. It was transmitting downward, from low Earth orbit, from inside our own atmosphere. The message repeated every hour, precisely on the minute, and its source coordinates matched the exact vector of my last SR-71 flight. That should have been impossible. I was summoned to Beale's underground command wing, the one used for black-tier briefings that didn't officially exist. The man in black was there again, though now his face looked hollow, like he hadn't slept since the hangar. He slid a printed transcript toward me. The words were simple, chillingly clear. Phase complete. Next cycle pending. Initiate projection field. I looked up at him. You think that's coming from me? He didn't answer. Instead, he switched on a monitor showing satellite telemetry. Every 30 minutes, one blip appeared over the Pacific, then split into two. One followed the Earth's curvature. The other stayed perfectly still. No satellite could do that. No aircraft could hold that position at Mach 0. It's like it's anchored, I said. He nodded slowly. Anchored to what, we don't know, but the static patterns match your cockpit's resonance profile. My what? Your brain, he said quietly. Whatever happened up there, you brought it back. They moved me to an isolation bay. Cameras watched from every angle. No mirrors this time, just white walls, soft light, constant monitoring. Every few hours they'd ask questions. What I remembered, what I heard, what I saw. I gave them nothing, because the truth was worse than anything they could imagine. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sphere again. Not glowing, not beautiful, just alive. It was breathing, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat, and sometimes I'd feel it watching back. Then on the 5th night, the lights went out. The hum returned. It started low, like before, but this time it carried a voice with it, my own voice. You shouldn't have looked. The sound came from inside my head. I clutched my temples, but it grew louder, more insistent, each syllable vibrating through the room. They needed a path. You opened it. The walls flickered. For a second, I could see the Pacific, vast black water, reflecting stars that weren't there. Then I saw something rising from beneath the surface. A shape, metallic, symmetrical, too large to be natural. A triangular craft, the size of a city, pushing upward through the ocean, leaving no waves behind. The hum turned into static, then into that same sentence from the transmission. Phase complete. Next cycle pending. The feed in my room came alive. Every screen showed the same image, that craft hovering in low orbit, its surface rippling with blue light. Then a voice I hadn't heard before, calm, mechanical, said, "Field calibration achieved. Replication commencing." The feed cut out. The next morning, I was escorted to the observation deck. The man in black stood there, hands behind his back, staring out at the horizon. In the distance, near the coastline, something shimmered in the atmosphere, like heat distortion, but too uniform. The radar techs confirmed it. Hundreds of signals, all identical to my plane's signature. 47 of them. He turned to me slowly. We think they're unmanned, but they're transmitting your call sign. I said, You mean they're copies? He nodded. Or echoes, The universe doesn't like unfinished equations, Pierce. You left something open, and now it's rewriting itself to close the gap. Outside, the distortion brightened one by one, streaks of light cutting through the clouds, heading west. Destination unknown, the text whispered. The man in black sighed. Maybe not unknown, just next. 2 hours later, every global satellite feed froze on the same image. 47 aircraft hovering in formation above the Pacific. Then, one by one, they vanished, leaving behind a single line of code embedded in the transmission feed. It read, Rule 11. Do not acknowledge reflections. 2 hours later, the world went quiet. Every broadcast station, every radar console, every satellite feed froze on a single image. 47 aircraft, identical in every way, hovering in formation above the Pacific. Then, one by one, they vanished. No sound, no light trail, just gone. Except for one. The last aircraft stayed directly above the coordinates of my final flight. It wasn't flying, it was waiting. And in the center of every screen, glowing faintly in static text, appeared a line none of us had ever seen before. Rule 11. Do not acknowledge reflections. The control room erupted. Operators shouted over each other. Phones rang off the hook. Analysts cross-checked systems. The man in black just stood still, staring at the screen like he already knew what was coming. At exactly 0300 hours, the feed flickered again. This time, it wasn't the aircraft. It was me. Not the me sitting in the command center, but the one from the hangar feed. The one who smiled before the broadcast began. He leaned forward, closer to the camera, his eyes almost luminescent. You shouldn't have tried to separate them, he said softly. There's no us and them anymore. Static washed through the speakers. The operators lost all control of the systems. Every screen went black, then flooded with real-time footage of cities around the world. New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Karachi. And above every skyline, faint outlines of the 47 aircraft shimmered in the atmosphere, just visible when lightning flashed or clouds moved across the moon. Then they phased out again. Gone. The man in black turned to me. They're not in our sky anymore. Then where are they? I asked. He hesitated. Not where, but when. Hours passed. No one spoke much. We were too afraid of what might answer back. At dawn, he came to me again, holding a classified folder stamped with crimson ink, temporal residue, Project Mirror Line. He slid it across the table. You need to see this. Inside were photos, grainy, decades old, blackbirds, pilots standing in front of hangars that didn't exist yet. And in one photo, dated 1967, was me. Same posture, same scar on my chin, same name tag, LT, May. I felt the room tilt. This is impossible. He nodded slowly. That's what they said the first time. The lights flickered again. The hum returned, so faint only I seemed to notice it. I looked up. The air above the table was shimmering, faint outlines forming in the glow.
My reflection, standing, not mirroring me, but moving first. He turned to the man in black. "It's already here." The reflection smiled. The hum deepened, vibrating through my chest. The table rattled, papers flew. Then the reflection leaned closer, its voice low and distorted. "Every reflection becomes real eventually. You flew too high, Pierce. You made the loop." I stumbled back, but the reflection didn't move. It reached out, pressing its hand against the invisible barrier between us. For a second, I saw the other side, a hangar flooded with light, dozens of pilots, all me, each one standing in front of a blackbird, each cockpit glowing from within. They all turned at once and looked straight at me. Then, together, they said, "Rule 12, the pilot never lands." The world blinked. When my vision cleared, I was back in the cockpit. Altitude, 84,900 feet. Speed, Mach 3.2. The earth below was blue and endless. The stars above didn't shimmer, they moved. Radio chatter filled my ears, different voices, all versions of mine, some calm, some screaming. "Throttle back, we're out of time, they're still watching us." And then silence. Ahead of me, in the black expanse of the upper atmosphere, 47 blackbirds hovered in perfect formation, each one identical, each with my call sign flashing faintly on its fuselage. The lead aircraft broke formation and aligned beside me. The pilot raised his hand in salute. I raised mine back. The horizon folded. Light poured in from every direction, blinding, soundless, infinite. Then, nothing. When they found my plane weeks later, it was empty. The cockpit sealed from the inside, engines cold. The flight recorder contained only one entry. Mission complete. Rule 13. The sky remembers. And to this day, radar stations still register an extra signal every time an SR-71 crosses 84,500 feet. One more aircraft, flying just beside it, invisible to every camera, but always there on the scope.